Hello, my outstanding friends. Going to be interesting today. We're going to be talking about Bennu, and Anton here has spoken about Bennu. Now, I like Anton, but I got to be honest with you. He's become an echo chamber for academia. He just repeats what they have to say, and I don't think he's given any new details, which is what I do. I give the details against what I am being bombarded by, which is academia. Somebody's got to stand up to him, and that's what I'm doing. Now, I'd like to see Anton engage with me, or at least consider the information I'm about to give you. Okay, as is my custom, shocker du jour right up front. This is Bennu. All right, this is the one they landed on, and they went deep inside because it was powdery, basically. They went inside, grabbed a chunk of stuff, and brought it back to Earth. This is what it is here. Now that is Bennu. This is Psyche. Do you see the similarity? You see this? That's a heart valve. This is actually tubing coming out, and so is this. That's a tube. That's not an impact. This right here is the actual tendon that wraps around to the muscle so that your heart can twist. And that's how hearts do. They twist. These are the colors of blood. Now, they have been out there and looked at this. And now it's exactly the same, basically, as this. Only this is just sort of a lot of dusty stuff around it. The other one is 140 miles across. I think this is only like a third of a mile. But it's another heart, gigantic, and it has another right there. That's a valve coming out. That's not an impact crater. It's not just a chunk of rock sitting on here. I think there's another one over here. There might be another one here. They have plumbing going all over the place in the heart, obviously. So here we got the actual anatomy. We got similar to that. This is the anatomy of a heart. And these are the valves. And you say, well, why wouldn't it be the whole heart? How come it breaks right there? And I can tell you exactly why that happens too. It's because of iron banding. You see the red and the blue? Those are two different atomic states of iron. They oppose each other. That's what causes iron banding. They snap. I have a heart here. Hold on one second. You see this? This is a heart too. That right there basically is this. You got to get it in the right light. This one died laying flat. That's why the iron banding went this way. You see the black and the red? They oppose each other. Black is blue when you're alive, but it turns black in the heart. This was laying like this. This is a heart. And all of the black opposed the red. Now, if it had died laying like this, it would be straight across here, and the top would just pop right off. In space, there is no gravity to pull it down like this to cause this kind of banding. In space, it would just band right here, which it did, pops right off, and right below that is the valves. Okay, I've explained the phosphate surprise is the phospholipid membranes. Yes, membranes, particularly biological membranes. Biological membranes contain phosphates. They're the phospholipids. Key component of cell membranes, all membranes, not just cell membranes. Okay, so we have presented the fact that the phosphates are in biological membranes which separate sarcomeres. All right, and this was a heart attack victim. This is where it's ripped. And these are what sarcomeres should look like. And of course they have the phospholipid membranes so they can slide back and forth and contract and expand, as your heart pumps. So we have seen that the chemistry is here, the anatomy is here, the phosphates are here, its sarcomeres are here, these are the membrane layers are here, it's here on Earth. They have analyzed this and they call it clay and watery, saturated with all the minerals and amino acids, which are, it is what it is, it's a heart. And they should be able to look at it a little deeper than they have. You know, they just say, oh, you have to study this for the next 100 years. I mean, it's just, it's crazy not to be able to accept what is, you have to accept it. Not only that, you see up here, these are bundles of tissue. These are fibers. These should be looked at closely. This is from a heart. It's undeniable. All right, now, if Anton can't address this with me and speak to me about this, then I question his scientific validity. And of all of them right now, they just don't want to get hurt by academia. And here's the membranes right here. These are the phospholipid membranes. Phospholipid bilayer. They layer over everything. And I have a whole ton of stuff here to show. And I have meteorites. I have several of them. This is a stony meteorite. And I'm going to show you things in this that it's and then I have metal ones, I have iron ones, I have another one here's a rocky one. It doesn't have any magnetism to it, but when I show you what it is, it will shock you to the core. You see that? It will shock you to the core. Now, can Anton step above the academics and look down and say, what are they saying? He's got to, or he's just proliferating things that they want you to believe, which just aren't true. Every statement I will make, I have evidence to support it. That's where it breaks, and they just pop right off. And I talk to autopsy guys, and they say, yeah, we always wondered about that. The whole top of the heart just pops right off when they do the autopsies, because when you're alive, everything's moving. There's no just popping it off. But when you die, the banding happens, just like I showed you, it all splits up. That's why you end up with this. And then, of course, you got all the other little tubing coming out of here and coming out of there and all these other places, just like I showed you on Bennu. And then you also have the tendon. You really can't see it on here, but there's up in here, there's a tendon that wraps around to the muscle. This is a little deeper into the heart. But well, hold on. All right, this makes it a little more obvious. Right here is where it breaks, is where I showed you the red and the blue. Pops off. That's right here. End up with this. Same as Psyche. Same as Bennu. With the valves, you end up where the valves are. The rest goes. Where it went, I don't know. This is the tendon. And you see the tendon right there? That's the tendon. And what the tendon does, it comes around and it transitions into muscle. So this is the anchor, and the muscle is the twister that makes your heart pump. And your heart doesn't just pump, it sucks. The vein side sucks up. This is something that's not fully understood either. I'm not kidding you. Veins are porous. They're suck blood. Well, the fluids suck right in through the veins, right through the tubes, all the length of the tube. It's not just at the end of the tube sucks up the vein blood. No, it's the entire length of the vein. This has got to. Everything's got to be understood now. They didn't understand the interstitium. This is just something that finally was spoken about. This layer right here, meet your interstitium, a newfound organ. This is what I discovered in 2015. I wrote the paper on this. I've been studying this much longer than anybody else. I know this stuff inside and out. And these little balls are what they call the chondrules that they find everywhere, because basically everything is coated with skin. But now they have a heart. They're down in the heart. They didn't find the chondrules. They said, ooh, this is amazing. What happened to the chondrules? Oh, well, we assume they washed away. Washed away from what? How did they wash away? We need to discuss this. I want to have an open debate with somebody that is making all their claims. I'm making my claims. Let's interact. Okay, my friends, this is not an attack on Anton. I like Anton. He is giving the academic perspective. He has become a science communicator from the academic side. I don't see him taking an alternative approach to anything anymore that I can see. And I have the alternative that shows that academia is wrong. Now, I will discuss this and debate this with Anton. You know, he's not going to talk to me probably, but I am going to debate him in obscurity. He's not going to be here, but I will debate him, what he has to say, and academia against what I have to say. Here goes. Okay, he's talking about the creation of the universe and so forth from the Big Bang and all this, and he's talking about major supernovas and where these particular particles came from. They're called chondrules. Now listen to what he has to say.
Near us, or near the early solar system, or some kind of a major emission from a powerful star that heated up everything in the solar system extremely quickly. So we actually have no idea where they came from, but they seem to be almost everywhere.
That's these balls, and those are, I will show you what they are. All right, because they couldn't find the chondrules, which are in the skin, they decided, well, something over the time destroyed the chondrules, so that solves that problem. So they found water on Bennu, and they say, well, that's why it destroyed the chondrules. Well, all living things have water in them. They just have this obsession with water turning chondrules into something else. No, there wasn't a lot of chondrules here because it's not skin, it's a heart. All right, so mainstream says, well, it's just got to be a little piece of a much larger body, a tiny leftover from a much larger body. Well, yes, it was, the body of a creature. So this is their explanation. It was some kind of a collision creating all this debris, and this just happened to be Bennu. And as I've shown you, it's a heart. You see this? They're saying it's approximately 2 billion years ago it was formed. That, my friends, is a heart. These are the heart valves. They went deep inside because it's just coated with blood. And they went through those blood dusty little particles. They went inside, grabbed that sarcomeres, and came back to Earth with them, and they can't accept what they spent billions of dollars to retrieve. They just can't accept it. All right, so academia and apparently Anton believe that this is a chunk of a piece of a big collision. Now listen to what he has to say.
Object. We're actually going to discuss this in more detail in one of the videos really soon, because we now know of several objects connected to this event, and many of them seem to have very similar composition.
Yes, and I have some right here. I have a whole set of meteorites here that still have, you know, the evidence of life in them. And I will show them, and they're here on Earth, and they can be tested quite easily. So this Anton, as far as I'm concerned, he's just saying what they say, and he's putting a little spin on it. He's got a whole batch of people that follow him, and they think everything he says is fabulous. But all he's saying is what academia is saying, and sort of in a nice way, and presenting a little pictures and so forth. But we're not getting anywhere. Anton, you're not getting there, my friend. You need to change and look at the alternate explanations, not academia. They will convolute everything and make it so that everybody mouths off what they say, and they'll make all these assumptions that are based on absolutely nothing. I don't assume anything. I look for the evidence, and then I make my conclusions, not assumptions. They make their assumptions, and then they make their conclusions based on their assumptions. I make my conclusions based on my evidence. Now, he's quoting from the most recent studies. This just came out, published 29th of January, 2025, so it's only a few days ago. And they're talking about what they had found on the samples of Bennu. And they're distorting everything. And there's not a single biologist in the world that can deny what I have shown. Okay, they discovered something really, really exciting inside these samples. But I'm going to let Anton explain this in his own words. Here it goes.
He discovered something really, really exciting inside these samples. One of the first surprising discoveries was magnesium phosphate, and they actually thought at first that this was a contaminant. But the thing is, nothing like this technically exists on Earth, mostly because it's usually too fragile to survive on Earth, and normally transforms into something else almost right away. And while the discovery of this unusual mineral once again confirms that this asteroid most likely came from some kind of a primitive ocean world. But more importantly, the phosphates here very likely played a role in forming organic molecules that have also been discovered in the sample. The sample is rich in a lot of different phosphates, and it's also rich in carbon and nitrogen, all of them essential components for life to exist.
Not only that, it was rich in amino acids. The amino acids are something that do not assemble by themselves. They assemble due to life.
He also discovered a lot of compounds that were clearly affected by liquid water. For example, phyllosilicates, compounds that are usually bound to water molecules, at least in most meteorites. And a lot of different organic molecules and hydrated minerals, all confirming the existence of liquid water sometimes in the past. And then, Glavin and his team additionally discovered something else. Here they found a lot of nitrogen-based compounds, including 14 out of 20 amino acids.
14 out of 20 amino acids. Anyway.
Or essentially building blocks of life, various nucleobases, which we normally find inside DNA and RNA, and very complex salts and clay minerals, including complex acids and organic.
This is clay minerals. That's the muscle. That's the muscle.
Organic molecules that are very often associated with life. And this abundance of amino acids in this tiny sample suggests that all of them were formed in low temperature conditions, most likely in ammonia-rich fluids.
Most likely, we assume, we think, it tends to suggest that. No, let's look at the evidence. The evidence is the key, not the assumptions. The fluid's also suggesting it came from a larger planetoid. No, there's no suggestion here. It's a heart. Most likely came from the outskirts of the solar system. See, he's following the academic line that they formed somewhere out, we have no idea, outskirts of the solar system, and then all these collisions brought that life to Earth. That's not the case. That is just not the case. There is nothing but life. Okay, so Anton is saying the same thing the academics say. Well, eventually these collisions way out in the solar system came and landed on planet Earth, creating life, basically. All right, you see this? I'm going to show you a couple of things right here. He's talking about salty waters in these. There's a lot of salts. Well, your body has tons of salt in it. Then they're showing this, plagioclase over here. And they think, well, how did plagioclase come? And it's all biology that they have found, and they're obscuring it to make it sound like it isn't. That it's just something that evolved way, way, way out somewhere. The body is a heart. He's saying this is the stuff that life is made out of. And it is an anatomical signature of the phosphate layers being the phospholipid membranes and the sarcomeres being the muscle. There is no question. The chemistry is there. The anatomy is there. The biology is there. The heart is there. And the ancient texts talk about battles in the heavens and of gigantic creatures, and everybody on earth saw it. And everybody thought they were crazy. They wrote it out of all the ancient texts because it was just too much for the human mind to accept, and it still is today. And Anton, I had hoped, could rise above this, but I'm not sure he's able to. Anton, we got to talk, brother. Okay, he's saying that Bennu has all the ingredients possible for life, but it obviously doesn't prove anything. Well, the anatomy, it does prove everything. So Anton's got to come around to looking at the alternative and presenting it against the academic. He's just going with the academic. And that's not going to work out for you, Anton. You got to look at the reality of the alternative, which is what I have presented. And the reason I am just doing this in obscurity is because I'm an obscure person. I'm not able to speak in public, basically. It's just what I have been put into. That's why he stayed away from the alternative, I think, because they would destroy him, just like they destroyed me, just like they destroyed Velikovsky and everybody else that spoke of an alternative to academia. They are the controllers of society. If you don't follow what they say, they will take your money and they'll give you a piece of paper that says you are a failure. You say what they tell you to say, or they won't give you that piece of paper. They will destroy your life. Academia is the controllers of the minds of society, and they have done a miserable job at giving us truth, and a fabulous job at controlling. See, here's another speculation. Scientists speculate or simulate Bennu crashing to Earth in September 2182. It's not pretty. Well, is that really going to happen? They don't know. And they come up with all these assumptions, and they're looking for funding. We got to figure out what we're going to do about this asteroid. Let's give them $500 billion and maybe they can make it go away. Well, that's basically what science has come down to. How much funding can we get for this ridiculous concocted idea? And that's what's happened. Since I've been doing my research, I found that that's all that they're interested in, is not the truth and something that will provide funding. Okay, I have much more to show, and I will be doing it over a course of discussions, hopefully with somebody else that will be able to present questions back and say, well, what do you mean by that? What are you talking about? That's what I want. This is Comet 67P. I followed this since 2015. They landed a lander on there called a Philae lander from the European Space Agency. This is a hip joint. All right, and this is what they look like when they are biological, which it is. It broke up in here somewhere instead of a fracture like this or that, but they break into all kinds of different places, and that is where it broke, up here. Now, that is very large, and this is what it looks like. That's a bundle of, I believe that's a muscle coming up. This is the tendon fibers, and that is, of course, the hip joint. And when it gets hit correctly by the sunlight, it boils the aromatic hydrocarbons. All right, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. That's blood. Boils right out of the artery and from the little blood vessels that service the little tissues up in this area. But see how they're shooting right out? They're not blowing off as dust. They're being evaporated out by being cooked. That's why space smells like steak. That goes back to February 2015. I reported all this stuff to all the space agencies. Mars is completely saturated with life. We got so much to talk about here, it's going to go on forever. And I have all the evidence right here in my shop. This is a 2-inch wide hair follicle, erector pili muscle, sebaceous gland, root ball, papilla, hair shaft, 2 inches wide, somewhat bigger than ours. I have DNA tested and CAT scan specimens. I have new species of different feet. I have different meteorites that came through. This is actually a bone, and that is the blood inside the bone, the marrow, that boiled off and actually turned into iron. This is a little bitty lung, and I know that for a fact because it has a latch on here that all lungs have. I named it the Spurr lock. Nobody knows about it. The anatomists don't even know it's here. And they didn't even know the interstitium was here until I discovered it in 2015. There's another meteorite here that is a stony meteorite. And this has cooked off until it got right down into the tendon enthesis. There's the artery, there's the vein. This was biological, and that right there is saturated with blood because it was just wet when it came through the surface. That's why this is boiling off. There's wet blood in there. You see this? All I gotta do is put a little bit of tiny water on there. It rehydrates instantly and turns back into blood. That was a plate that came right across there. When it came through space, it heated up, boiled that blood, popped it right off. And I have other ones that did the same thing. Here's another one that came through. When this came through, came right down like that and straight across. This boiled the blood right out of here and exploded it. You see that circle right there? That circle right there? There was another one right over here. And there's a saturated with blood there, and it exploded. And I have a terrestrial fingertip here, which is the same thing. That's a fingertip from a creature came through space. This one is exactly the same, only it was here on Earth. It didn't cook. But this is where all the blood is. Here and here. Coming down. This is the artery side. You see how exactly the same it is? You see the hook and the hook? You see the vein and the vein? That's the vein, and that's the other vein. This is where the red blood was over here, and that's the stuff that stays wet and explodes. There's another one at the end. They called it the digital terminus, which I coined. Because all your fingers and toes have the terminus at the end. The blood comes down, turns around, and comes back. Vein and artery. I drill holes in these to go in and get DNA out of it. And we had, like, there's a hole deep inside there, a hole right into here, to get DNA samples to test these things. And nobody will test them. So, that's what we got. Nobody's interested in the truth. They want to continue on with science says so they can stay protected against the attacks. And because they will be attacked. And if Anton talks to me, he will likely be attacked. But if he's a real scientist, he'll talk to me. That's all I'm saying.